I have to talk about the greatest match of all time. I said it, the final between Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. If the greatest ever was just about numbers, there would be no big debate how great tennis athletes are. Name me better athlete. This one is a long time coming, but after Roland Garros, I had to take a break. After 2 weeks of tons of tennis, posting all the time on social media, videos, more podcasts, we had live screenings. I needed to take a break. But I have to talk about the greatest match of all time. And yes, I said it. It was the greatest match of all time, and that was the final between Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. Let's talk about it in this episode of Match Stories. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Anastasia, there's so many other matches out there that you would consider the greatest match of all time. You might be thinking actually of a match I've talked about a few times on this on Ground Pass on our podcast, and it is the 2008 final between Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal. And yes, for me, for the longest time, that was the best match I had watched. The cinematic elements of it are unmatched. And, I think tennis has changed so much since then. There are roofs now. So one of the elements of that match that I always just thought was just beautiful was as the sun is setting, they're still trying to finish the match. It's dark. People are taking photos. So you just see flashes in the crowds. And that just gives an essence and a je ne sais quoi, as I said on the podcast, to that match. But I think this, for me now, is the greatest match I've ever watched. And we can talk about this in terms of the GOAT debate. What is the greatest ever? And I think if the greatest ever was just about numbers, there would be no big debate. There just wouldn't be any debate. It would just be facts. This has this many titles. This has that many titles. The one with the most wins. But the GOAT debate isn't just about the numbers. It's about something else. It's about feeling. It's about experience. It's about your personal preferences. So let's talk about what I think was the greatest match of all time up until now. Who knows? Wimbledon's coming up. There might be another one in a couple of weeks, but I have my notes in front of me here. So let's talk about the Roland Garros men's final between Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner. We need to back up a bit with these two. I think ever since they met for the first time, there has been a chatter around them and their rivalry. Yes, it's already a rivalry. These are some of the youngest players on tour, and already they're creating such fun and exciting matches that people see them hand to hand. They already have a name. Just like Fadal, now we have Sincaraz. That's the name I'm picking. Put in the comments if you have other options, but it is Sincaraz for me. I think what makes their matches very exciting is that they're very different players. Alcaraz is fun, energetic, a bit chaotic sometimes on court. His athleticism is unmatched and he has such feel for the ball. Sinner, on the other hand, is a bit of a robot in a good way. He's precise. He's exact. No mistakes, no extra shots. Serve elite. He's a little icy to Carlos's fire. And each time they meet, they bring this energy to the court. I think what kind of cemented their rivalry, and they have built on that since then, was the 2023 match at the US Open that went to 5 sets, an absolute epic. That led to Carlos Alcaraz's first Grand Slam title. But ever since then, every time they came up on the draw and there was a projection of them meeting in the future, that was it. That was the match we were all waiting for, to see how these two young new phenoms in the sport of tennis were going to come up against each other. So that brings us to Roland Garros 2025. Coming into the tournament, they were number 1 and number 2 in the world, which meant the only way they were going to meet was in the final. We crossed our fingers and hoped for the best that Jannik Sinner and Carlos would do their job and get us to the final we all wanted. Finally seeing them in a final at a Grand Slam. They've played Grand Slam matches together. In fact, they played last year at Roland Garros, but it was a semifinal match. So this was it. This was the hope and the dream, and the dream and the hope came true. I experienced this match in 3 acts. So that is how I'm going to talk about the match. The day before, I had just watched Coco Gauff defeat Aryna Sabalenka in the women's final. It had already been such a busy 2 weeks for Ground Pass. So I thought, you know what? Sunday, I'm going to take it easy. Was I excited for a Alcaraz final? Yes, but also I needed a break. And I thought, I'm going to go get a workout. I'm going to do my thing, and then I'm going to drop into the match whenever it is that I do and carry on from there. When I finally turned on the match, I was meeting up with friends at a cafe. Let's call this Act 1. Sinner was already up by the first set and was well on his way to winning the second. And I thought, I guess that's it. Sinner is him. You know, he has that sort of icy, cool precision, and he had been defeating people throughout this tournament with ease. He hadn't dropped a set. So it just looked at the time that he had this one and he was going to take it and win. Then we went into the third set, having coffee and a little bit of food with friends, had the phone up, watching, not really thinking much of it. We get to the third set, and somehow Carlos fights his way to the win. Now things are getting exciting. And that takes us to Act 2. In Act 2, I still didn't really believe. Let's call a spade a spade. I thought, okay, Carlos got a set. Proud of him that he didn't lose in straight sets. But for sure, Sinner was going to bounce back and take the fourth. And it looked like he was going to. Carlos Alcaraz was serving at 5-3 and was down 40-love. Sinner had 3 match points to take the title at Roland Garros. And then that's when this match completely flipped on its head. I was already drafting out the Sinner wins tweet and, looking for photos to post and celebrate how clutch he was this tournament, as Carlos saved all 3 match points, won that game, and took it to 5-4. Still, I thought, okay, well, Jannik is now serving for the match. He's clutch on serve. This is his title. Continued drafting tweets and posts and Instagram captions for the winner that I thought at the time was Jannik Sinner. And this is a lesson, my friends, in never give up. Because while I had given up and had started writing the celebratory messages and tweets and planning out videos that I was going to make, Carlos Alcaraz was still in it. He still believed. And before I knew it, we were at 5-5. We went to a tiebreak. And Carlos Alcaraz, in one of the most clutch tiebreaks that he has played, takes the 4th set. And this is when all chaos breaks out. I'm standing in the middle of a restaurant trying to figure out how I can get to a bigger screen. Act 3. Now we're sprinting. We're sprinting down 3rd Avenue in Manhattan. I had heard about this bar called 30 Love. Actually turned out to be a really great place to watch the last bit of this match, the 5th set. And it was packed. There were tons of people there watching. Half Sinner, half Alcaraz. It was a really great vibe. I was there with friends, sitting at a table with a group of other friends that we didn't know. But in this moment, we had all come together for one thing. And it kind of felt like that was what was happening. I was texting other friends that weren't with me. They were watching as well. Everyone was glued to this match. There are very few times in sports that we have this sort of feeling. And this is part of why this is such a great match. Everyone was locked in. Everyone was paying attention. It wasn't just they were playing fabulous tennis. It was the jeopardy. It was Sinner almost had this in the bag. Carlos fought back, got it to a deciding fifth set. What was going to happen? And here we are sitting in a bar. They're trading breaks back and forth. And at this point, I'm thinking, we deserve this. You know what we deserve? We deserve a 10-point tiebreak. A little bit of a tennis lesson here, really quick. But a 10-point tiebreak is what happens in the deciding fifth set at a Grand Slam if it gets to a tiebreak. It doesn't go to 7. There are extra stakes here. It goes to 10. And the boys got us there. Here we are. 5 grueling sets. We're about the 5-hour mark. And they're about to play a 10-point tiebreak. Carlos again, clutch in tiebreaks, wins the tiebreak 10-2. The bar goes wild. Everyone's cheering. Carlos has collapsed to the clay. And I'm thinking, how did this just happen? A few hours ago, I was standing in line waiting for a coffee. Sinner was 2 sets to love up, and I thought he had the match. And here I am at a crowded bar, 1 Prosecco deep, thinking, wow, this was a moment. I had chills. I was sweating. It was a bodily experience, if you can call it that. But it was such a great moment. Texting friends, asking how this could happen, getting messages from people. Were you watching? Of course I was watching. Why wouldn't I be watching? But that's it. That's what makes this the greatest match of all time. At least for me. I'm going to always remember it not for the backhands and the forehands, not even for the saved match points. I'm going to remember it because of the experience of it, how I viewed it, who I was with, where I was. And isn't that what the great moments are about? Oh, where were you in 2008 when this young Spanish kid, Rafa Nadal, finally beat the Prince, Roger Federer? I know where I was. I was little, but I do remember those exact moments. And to wrap up, I've talked about a few lessons from this match. Never give up is always one. It was a true lesson in every point matters. No matter what the past was, you just have to look ahead. Carlos Alcaraz was 3 match points down. He was serving. And it didn't matter those 3 points that he just lost. He was just thinking of the next one. And then the next one after that. And then the next one after that. Composure and self-belief also matter. Juan Carlos Ferrero, Carlos Alcaraz's coach, talked about in press how even when he was down those match points, he looked at him and he shook his racket in a way that Juan Carlos understood to be he was still there. He still believed. And here we are. And finally, this match for me really does exemplify how great tennis athletes are. This match was about 4.5 hours long, and there were no bathroom breaks. They had the changeover every 3 games, but that was pretty much it. It shows that tennis players have the speed of a sprinter, the endurance of a marathoner, the strength of a boxer, the finesse of a dancer, while still being mentally locked in for 4.5 hours. Name me better athlete. This match is going to live rent-free in my head for a while. Until, of course, the next greatest match of all time comes along.